Hello, everybody. My name is Johannes Wolf. You have dialed in a teaching video series for Kaplan-Meier curves in the context of cancer research, clinical development. In the past, we have explained the concept of Kaplan-Meier curves, shown how to read them, shown how to make them. Today, we want to show how to compare them, the so-called log-rank test. In statistical testing, we typically assume a null hypothesis. That null hypothesis is typically the opposite of what we believe, the opposite of what we want to find. If we have a drug and compare the results of the drug in a patient population to another patient population that didn't have the drug, we want our patient population to do better. The null hypothesis will be that they don't do better, that the two patient populations are the same. Then the likelihood of the null hypothesis is calculated, and it is calculated as a p-value. That can be a number between 0 and 1. 1 would mean absolutely certain the null hypothesis is correct. 0 would mean absolutely certain the null hypothesis is not correct. We want a low number. The benchmark is typically 0.05. If the value calculated by the test is below 0.05, we typically call that statistically significant. Now, the story is much, much more complicated, and there are even more modern methods, such as the Bayesian mathematics, that go in a completely different direction. But still, the log-rank test is the most typical way to compare Kaplan-Meier curves, and it will stay for a couple of more years. So let me show you how this is done in SPSS. For this, I have chosen a situation as I have seen it in clinical development of a early phase drug development, and I hope you find that interesting. Here is the story. This is the study from which the data came that I'm going to show you in a moment. It had originally a dose escalation starting from 25 milligram and escalating to 350 milligrams. Here you see the data. N means the number of patients enrolled in each of these dose cohorts. DLT stands for dose limiting toxicity and is something that we don't want to have. Response means the tumor shrank, and that is something we want to have. You see, up to 150 milligrams, we had neither toxicity nor response. 200 milligrams, we saw 2 of the tumors shrink. When we went higher, we also saw dose-limiting toxicities until 350 milligrams, where both of the first patients that were enrolled experienced a dose-limiting toxicity. Therefore, that dose was too high. That's not the data I'm going to show you. What I will show you is the comparison data of 2 doses that came thereafter. In the past, we would have taken the 300 milligram, called this our maximal tolerated dose and recommended phase 2 dose, and would then have used this in phase 2. Nowadays, we are getting more sophisticated with the doses, and we have a dose comparison component in the study. We picked 300 milligrams versus 200 milligrams because we thought the difference to 250 would have been too small to see anything. The primary endpoint of that randomized comparison was a toxicity endpoint. What I will show you, it was an exploratory endpoint. Therefore, you can do this sometime in the middle of the study. You don't need to wait for the final point. Here are the data. This slide shows the results of the comparison and all the clicks you need to do for a log-rank test to do the comparison between the 2 doses. Here are the data. There are the 2 columns necessary for any kind of Kaplan-Meier curve. One is numeric and shows the time. The other one is binary and shows if by the end of the time there was or there was not an event. When you have that, you click on Analyze, Survival, Kaplan-Meier. SPSS opens a new window. you pull in the variable of time, you pull in the variable of status, you click on define event, another window opens, you tell SPSS what is the definition of an event, and it is Y for yes here. Then you click on options and you click plot survival to get the Kaplan-Meier plot. You may or may not unclick survival tables and means. I do that until I'm satisfied with my analysis. Then you can click OK, and you would get a Kaplan-Meier curve of all those data together. But that's not what we want today. What we want today is two Kaplan-Meier curves defined by the dose. So we pull in the third variable, the variable dose, or whatever other variable you have to define the different patient groups. Here it is dose. Then you can click compare factors, click Logranktest, continue, okay, you have your test. Congratulations. This is the output window, the result of the Logranktest. The first thing to look at is actually not the number, it is the curve itself. And you see now we have two curves, a green curve indicating the patients that received 300 milligrams and a blue curve indicating patients that received only 200 milligrams. You need to understand Kaplan-Meier curves and be able to read this to come to a view if this looks convincing or not. To me, this looks convincing. The second thing then is to actually find the number, the result of the Logranktest. Well, it is here, Logranktest, the number in the end. I circled it, the circle would not have come from SPSS. The result is 0.028. Now, is that statistically significant? The word statistically significant has also other conditions. One of which is it is typically used for hypothesis-driven tests of the primary endpoint. In this case, this wasn't the primary endpoint. We do have a hypothesis, and it is hypothesis-driven. But then there is one more thing to those tests. You are supposed to do them only once, and we don't have the intention to do this only once. We want to do this multiple times. So this is not a formal hypothesis-driven test. This is an exploratory analysis, and within the exploratory analysis, the p-value has some value. It tells you how likely it is that these curves are really different. In this context, this number is below 0.05. It is in the area where a hypothesis-driven test would have said statistically significant. This is good. This means, yes, there is a difference, as much as an exploratory analysis can tell that. Congratulations, you reached the end of the videos. This concludes our little series of videos for Kaplan-Meier curves. I will put the previous videos up here to click on it, but if you saw it all, you know a lot. How to make Kaplan-Meier curves, what the basis of that is, how to differentiate overall survival from progression-free survival, how to read the curves, how to make them, and how to compare them in Logranktest. That is a lot.